What's up, everyone? Thank you for checking out episode 2 of the Gamecast. Uh, just so you know, had a little name change there. Uh, Apparently, there's a lot of game shows everywhere. Duh. And I thought ours would be okay because it's an acronym, but apparently yeah. So we're the Gamecast, which I think actually sounds better.
Yeah.
Uh, I am one of your hosts, Kenneth Surya Jr. You can call me Kenny. And we have
Teresa Anchor. You can call me Tess or Teresa. I don't mind. Whichever is fine.
And yeah, to this week we're going to be talking about a bunch of stuff. But first, similar to last week, we want to talk about some of the things we got into over the week. Uh, for me,
Mhm.
I finished, and I need to correct last week. I didn't have the name correct. It's the Promise of Neverland, or the
Mm.
Promised Neverland. There we go.
Promised Neverland. Yeah.
The Promised Neverland. Yeah, I finished that anime this week, and it was great. I can't wait until season 2. Um, and we're gonna talk a little bit more about that. But it's definitely one that I recommend, especially if you're into horror anime like I am. For those that are a little bit on the squeamish side, it's actually not a whole lot of horror. It's more of a intense or not intense, but tension filled, suspense filled type of anime. Um, it's not something where there's like blood and arms and limbs flying everywhere or stuff like that. Very good, and we're gonna talk about that a little bit later in the cast.
Definitely.
Uh, but what else have I been doing? Oh, I've been playing uh, Nino Kuni, Wrath of the White Witch. I've actually have the remaster version on PC because I missed it when it first came out on PS3, and it's pretty good. That's actually the game you're going to be seeing while you listen to us. It's not as good as I had hoped. However, it does have a Pokemon vibe where
Pokemon.
uh, each of the characters fight with familiars, and the familiars are they look like not Pokemon, if you will, and you can collect more by fighting and taming or serenading other familiars and use them to fight with your characters, which is interesting. And a lot of the artwork, or I shouldn't say artwork, they have some of the cutscenes are done by Ghibli.
Ooh, I
So
really want to
it looks
see it.
yeah, it looks great. And I forget the studio. Um, it was developed by Level 5.
Mm.
And they make great games. It's really fun. It's a lot of fun. I'm actually I don't know how far into the story I am. I know I'm pretty decent in terms of the plot, but RPGs. I mean, they just like 40 hours is nothing, right? So I, I obviously 40 hours is a lot, but for RPGs, especially JRPGs, they're not that. That's normal, right? And
Yeah.
so I don't know how far I am, but it's been really interesting so far, and I think some of the gameplay mechanics could be tweaked a bit, uh, especially with the idea of leveling your characters and making sure that they are fit for the future fights. I've done just about every cut or side quest, every beast hunt, every like extra little thing you can do up until a point in the story, and along with the story quests, of course. And my characters still feel underleveled, and I feel like that's a bit of an issue because usually I don't do that. I just do the bare minimum because I
Yeah.
really want to get through the story, see what
Yeah.
happens. Final Fantasy, I'm notorious for that. But in this one, I was like, you know what? I haven't had a good RPG in a long time. I want to take my time. I want to 100% it. And so far, I'm like, you know what? Do I really care? Do I really want to do this? Especially seeing it's taking longer than expected, and I'm not getting a whole lot from it. I'm not going to review the game. There's a lot of stuff that I think needs to be tweaked. And I haven't played the second one, but I heard the second one isn't as good. So I'm like,
Mm.
So that's been sort of my week in a
Mhm.
nutshell. Been
Mhm.
catching up on or finishing The Promised Neverland, playing Nino Kuni, and watching. I did watch the new episodes of Baruto, which were extremely
Mm.
boring, and waiting for One Piece. I'm sorry, there's way too much filler in Baruto, and I want to because the manga is so good. I want to see these things, and I think that they have like a new story arc with
Mm.
them going to jail and pretending to be criminals. Yeah, yeah, it's that is it. That part is interesting, but the other stuff before it, the filler, you can tell it's filler. It doesn't. At least in Naruto, when there was filler, it would be like almost like backstory for
Yeah,
characters.
yeah.
One of the characters was like one of the tailed people who, you know, I'm bad with names, but they were trying to take all the tailed creatures
Mhm.
out of the people,
Yeah.
and one of them was captured in the manga. You don't see him. You just see him being captured and being, he's going to eventually die. But
Yeah.
filler, they actually have a whole episode that shows where he came from and who he's about, what he's
Right.
about.
Right.
And I was like, you know what? It was filler, but it actually pertained to the story in a way that I was like, oh, this is new information. This is actually
Yeah.
kind of cool. So Baruto so far, and granted, I haven't read the most recent stuff, but
Mhm.
as at least from right now, I'm like, we don't need these episodes. Throw them away. It's trash. So
I'm surprised you're even putting yourself through it.
because I stopped watching Naruto,
Mhm.
and it got to a point where it was coming up on they were doing the new Ninja War. And
Yeah.
so I went back and watched, and I was like, you know what, this is actually really good. But at a certain point, I just got tired of the filler. It was like
Yeah.
it's like I don't know if you guys remember Toonami and watching shows and
Yeah.
all of it, because Toonami would never tell you like when a
Of
season was
course, why would they
over.
do that? They didn't want to lose their ratings.
Exactly, and so they would just you would get to a cliffhanger and then filler, or they would go backwards, and I'm like, why
Yeah.
would you do this to me? I've been waiting
Me.
for this episode. Yeah, so I think what I'm gonna do is stop Boruto and
Uh-huh.
wait till it so I can just binge watch. I'm like, all right, this is whack. I can skip that one, and then
Yeah.
instead of doing it each week. But I have my subscription to Crunchyroll, and so I'm
Yeah.
trying to use it, and because there's no commercials. But
Yeah. Oh, nice.
yeah, it's pissing me off a little bit. Uh, so how was your week? I heard you weren't feeling well this week.
I basically didn't have a week, so I think my week today, like last week, last Thursday we had our first podcast, and then today is basically the next day.
Oh
I
snap!
jumped through a wormhole and I'm here. There nothing, everything that happened in between didn't. Today's the first day of the week. I was obviously I had a family event over the weekend, and so Friday, Saturday, Sunday I was completely with family, and then I got sick on Monday, and basically I woke up today. So it,
Goodness.
it just, yeah, I was down, and it wasn't just me, it was my sister. And so it was just not a pretty sight. And it was, I mean, I really mean it wasn't a pretty sight. Like, my nieces came and brought some like food. They're like, okay, well, here's some Gatorade and some crackers and this, that, and the other. And I said, you need to leave immediately. This place is a cesspool. Like, unless you want to be one of the fallen, get out now. So it was not a good look. It really wasn't.
It was
I'm
smart.
that
Gatorade and crackers though. That's yeah. That's a black move right there. Yep.
yeah, right, right. Gatorade and saltines. Hey, for some
Oh
people, that's
goodness.
actually a regular meal, and we need to be okay and say something. Sometimes it be like that. Moving on. So, what else? That's all I did this week. To be fair, that's all I did this week, um, and I did end up catching up on Promise Neverland, just the first few episodes. So I know I'm behind, but I'm gonna get there because in fact, right after we finish today, that's probably what I'm gonna be doing because I'm that intrigued.
Awesome.
That intrigued. I did watch from my deathbed. I did watch some Terrace House. I mentioned last week that I've been watching the Japanese reality show Terrace House. It's about six people who move into a really nice house that's been provided for them somewhere, either in Japan or around the world. They've been given cars and they live their regular lives, but they all move into this house, and it's like real world, but without the, like I said, the alcohol last week. And then there's no side interviews because I've always hated those side interviews. They're terrible. I
Yeah,
don't
they
want to
are.
hear what you have to say after it's happened and you got to think about it. I want to see what's happening in the moment. And the panel is amazing. They say the funniest things. And so I'm like, I just finished watching the Hawaii season and Guilty Samurai. I'm going to get one of those shirts. I know you don't know what I'm talking about right now, but anybody else who does, Guilty Samurai, I need to get one of those shirts. What was it? Shinu Hodo no Koi, a love worth dying for. That guy is insane, but I need one of those shirts. That's besides the point. So yeah, that's what I've been doing this week. But I do recommend Terrace House for anybody. I know I plugged it last week. Netflix really owes me something for this, by the way.
Oh,
So
Netflix owes me a lot.
yes.
We're not even gonna go there. Um, so you did say that, and we were talking a little bit off air about, people looking to get into anime. In terms of the video game side of things, it's a little bit
Mhm,
easier to kind of jump in
mhm.
and, especially with a lot of the free video games out right now. But as
Yeah.
far as getting into anime or, in terms of more, I don't want to say nerd hobbies, but
Mm.
you know that side of our talk or rants or whatever,
Mhm.
it's a little difficult. It can be a
Yeah.
little difficult. There's a lot of bad anime, just like
Yeah.
anything else, and there's a lot of
Yeah.
good anime, and the
Mhm.
popular stuff isn't always the best.
Right. Exactly.
Baruto, and so uh, yeah, it's sometimes it's hard to kind of get people, kind of give them a little shove if they,
Yeah.
to see if there's something they would like. And there's
Yeah.
things that we could recommend,
Mhm.
depending on your preference
Right.
and
Right.
what you're looking for in terms of anime. If you're looking for
Right.
something more finite, where there's only
Mhm.
like one season,
Yeah.
we have a bunch of those. Or if you're looking for something where it's like a movie or a film, where
Mhm.
it's solo, or something that's kind of ongoing, or at the very least the end is far in the future.
Yeah.
Whereas like the One Pieces and Naruto's and stuff like that, we have a few that we think you would be interested, or hopefully you'll be interested in.
Okay.
Um,
Mhm.
Depending on where you are.
Yeah.
If you're into horror, or at the very least the idea of there being monsters or otherworldly entities in your anime, uh, the one that we were talking about before, The Promised Neverland, I think is definitely a good choice.
Mhm.
Especially because it's low on that scale.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of gore. There's not a lot of, in terms of like jump scares. There's some creepy things that happen, but
Yeah.
it's more of a thinking anime
Yeah.
where, and so the premise is we have these kids. They're orphans. They're living in this orphanage, and which is surrounded by these walls, and there's like a gated entrance that leads into a tunnel, and they're never allowed to go there.
Yeah.
Only the only time they're allowed to go there is when they're being adopted. I'm doing air quotes. You can't
Well,
see that,
yes, I
but
could. I actually heard the air quotes, by the way.
yeah. And so what's happening? So the first episode, and this really isn't a spoiler. It kind of like just sets things up. But the first episode, two of the kids, one of the kids gets adopted, air quotes, and they're leaving, and two of their friends notice that she left her doll or her bunny, and they run to give her the bunny. Mind you that none of the kids are allowed to go here, to
Mhm.
the entrance, unless they're being adopted. And so they get there, and they're going to give her the bunny, but they're looking around. They can't find where she is, and they're like, what's going on? There's this truck here with like a tarp.
Mhm.
um, it looks like almost like a military style vehicle where, like,
Mhm.
if you can imagine, picture soldiers in the back sitting, and there's like I guess like a mesh covering, or like a covering that, so like they would have to open it to kind of get out of the truck. And so they go to open to kind of see what's going on, and they find uh, their friend. And
Yeah.
so I'm not going to get into what happens from there, but it's you come to find out that the people where they thought they were, they aren't, and
Exactly.
they're actually being used in a way. Uh,
Mhm.
the closest thing I could say without saying it is probably like the Matrix. If you think of that, how the people were set up in that, they were like, I guess, batteries in the Matrix, like they were treated
Yeah.
as such. And there's like a, they were in the virtuality world of the Matrix. Whereas this is the real world, and there's no such thing as that in this anime, but it kind of gives you an idea of where it's going,
Yeah.
in that sense. So a lot of the plot so far, or at least this first season, it's about these two characters finding a way out. And
Yeah.
the thing is, though, the people that are like the caregivers,
Mhm.
are in on it in the sense that they know what's going on, and they are aware that some of the kids might have found out. And so that's where the tension and the drama comes from.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely an awesome anime. I've made it to the end,
Mhm.
of the first season, and I'm it's one of those things where like you start watching and you just keep watching until you finish. It's
Yeah.
not some, what I mean, unless there's something that comes up in terms of, you have to be responsible, you have kids,
Adulting.
you got you got to eat eventually,
No,
those type
no,
of
you
things.
don't have to eat. That is optional. We as an anime, okay, I have to step in here. As an anime fan, we all know this, especially if you've been an anime fan for over 30 years. You do know that eating is optional. Okay?
You got to find the right finger food, right? You got to it's like I don't want to look away, so I need this to be right here, right towards the mouth, right there.
The
Boom.
food might end
Uh
up being a crumb in your bed that happened to be there 4 days ago because sometimes you just can't let go. Remember what I said? I watched Death Note. I watched 22 episodes because what it's 24. I watched
yes.
22 episodes straight. I'm talking about day to the day. And I woke up the next morning. I didn't even go to sleep. My mom was in the kitchen because I still lived at home back then. And my mom was in the kitchen. She was like, "What's wrong with you?" And I was like, come on, this is my mother. She doesn't care about anime. And I'm like, and I'm sitting, I'm like, I just watch, and I start telling her about anime, and she doesn't like those things, our good Christian
Right,
mother.
right.
And she's like, I don't know why you do this to yourself. I said, no, mommy, you need to understand what I just witnessed. I mean, this guy, he played everybody. Like,
It's nuts. You
you
should be like, Mom, you don't even know, son. You don't even know. Well,
don't even know.
you don't know. It's
You don't know what I
crazy.
went through. I'm
Yes.
rooting for the anti-hero here. I am, and I'm conflicted, but I'm not conflicted. I'm conflicted, and I'm not. I you're my mom. You need to help me figure this out. My heart's on the fence. Okay, teach me right from wrong because I'm going wrong. I'm going wrong. Going down the road. I'm following him, man. I'm gonna be part of this cult, man. that was
It was
that was
nuts.
literally like 38 hours of no sleep because I'd already been awake, and then I went and watched 24 hours worth of TV.
Right. And for the people who are like, how could you do such things? Don't front. Like you haven't watched a Netflix whatever and
Serious.
watched the entire, like I watched Stranger Things like from the moment it was on Netflix, and I just kept watching. I didn't
Yeah.
finish.
Yeah.
I mean I didn't stop, because I just had to know what happened with
Yeah.
six. And so yeah, like that's essentially what it is, just in
Mhm.
animated form. That's all.
Mhm.
So I see you back there in the back rolling your eyes, whatever. You've
Whatever.
done it. You've
Yeah.
done it.
We can see you through your computer camera. Okay, we know. So
And
yeah, don't
and the
don't
thing
front.
is, with the anime, it's only what 20 something out, or 20 something minutes, or
Yeah.
27, give or
Yeah.
take a commercial, that sort of thing. Whereas, yeah, Stranger Things is like an hour an episode. So yeah,
Yeah.
don't front. And I know the other two of you guys, you didn't see Stranger Things, but you saw The Witcher. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mhm.
All right.
Mhm. Mhm. And the rest of you were all binging on Game of Thrones. Okay.
Facts.
Total facts. In fact,
Facts.
the people who live above me seem to have been doing that a few weeks ago, and I had a problem with it because it was like daily, and I heard horses like running. It was probably the scene with the Dothraki and the
Mhm.
and the fire arcs, the whatever thing, and the horses and all that stuff. And I'm like, I literally can hear you guys. I can hear it. Your sound bar is too much. Okay, we get it. Samsung makes really great products. Uh,
Facts.
Okay, more facts. Anyway, we digress, but back to the Promised Neverland.
Definitely a good show.
Yeah.
Also, if you're also into horror, now this one I recommend, and I know it's not Halloween or anything, but I dig horror, so just bear
Mm,
with.
hmm
Another one is called Another, and This one has a really interesting premise. So it starts off, there's a classroom, and one of the students, I believe, it's been a little while since I've seen it. One of the students, I believe, uh, dies, right?
Mm,
I'm not sure if she commits suicide or not, but I know she dies. And what
mm.
happens is the class and the teacher, they were thinking that, you know what, we want to honor this person. And so when they went to graduate, they pretended that that person was there. They had an extra seat that no one sat in when they took their pictures and stuff. And when they graduated, they were like, they announced the person and everything, and they pretended like the person was there. Apparently, the the spirit of the person got upset and and cursed that classroom. And so what happens is each year there's a new student, or so like the students will come to that class, there'll be an extra student on the roster. So let's say there's only supposed to be 12, there'll be 13. The 13th student is actually dead. They died a year before or years before, and nobody knows that they're dead. The student, himself or herself doesn't know. The classmates or whatever, they don't know because their memories are changed every year. And so what
Wow.
happens is if because there's not it's the wrong number of kids in the class, someone dies just about every day. It's kind of like Final Destination in that sense.
Wow.
So what they did was over time they started to pick a kid out of the classroom and pretend like that kid isn't there. And so there'll be 13 classmates. They'll pick one and pretend like they're not there at all. And the idea is if they pick the person who had died and pretend that they're not there, then the curse doesn't happen, supposedly. And
Mm.
so for years, I guess for a few years, it started to work. Unfortunately, a new kid comes to the class or comes to the town. They move to the town and they're enrolled in that class and they don't know the curse. And
Oh.
so the person that everyone is ignoring, he starts he wants to befriend them. He thinks that people are ignoring her because they're bullies or whatever the case may be, and so he befriends her. And
Mm.
then all of a sudden, the deaths started happening, and
No.
and so they're of course all the mayhem happens where like people are trying to explain to him what's happening. The person is also trying to explain this is why we do these type of things, and what they find out, and this is not a spoiler, but
Mm.
there was a rumor that there's another way to beat the curse,
Mm.
and so this character's journey is to find out a way to stop it without sacrificing one of the students.
Mm-hmm.
And what eventually happens is it gets chaotic because they're a group of kids that they just want to go back to pretending that this person doesn't exist, and
Yeah.
hopefully that'll fix it. But it doesn't always work that way. And the new kid or the new or the main protagonist wants to figure out a way to just stop the curse. And so they're both on this like these two different paths, and
Mm-hmm.
they end up colliding. People don't trust each other and all this other stuff. So it it turns into a really good suspenseful anime
Mm-hmm.
that's similar to Final Destination. It's called Another.
Another.
Yes, and I think you guys should check it out if you're into horror. It's
Mm-hmm.
definitely good, like really really good.
It sounds
Uh,
good. I feel like I've seen the artwork before,
mm,
so I'm gonna check that one out.
yep. And then of course, on the other hand, there's the action-packed stuff.
Right.
Uh, and so the I guess the easiest ones is like Dragon Ball Z, Naruto, that sort of thing.
Those
But since
are
we're
long.
since we're doing a theme in terms of all of the anime we've been talking about now has young people in it, I
Mm-hmm.
think uh, My Hero Academia is a
Mm-hmm.
really good anime to check out. A lot of it is, and that and One Punch actually, a lot of it is very relatable. Wanting to be a superhero, um, and the characters, they get what's called quirks, so it's basically like mutations. So think of X-Men, and
Hmm.
some of them decide to be heroes, some decide to be villains, and there's a school that teaches people how to be heroes. That's the gist. There's way more to it, but that's the gist, and it's pretty great. And One Punch is essentially a guy who beats everyone with one punch. And for me, that sounds horrible because I usually hate that sort of thing. Like the Bruce Lee movies, I love Bruce Lee, but
Yeah.
it was like no one's going to beat him. What is the point? Like even when he gets to the final guy, he punches him maybe twice, scratches his chest, and then he dies. So it's whatever, right? I need it to be like, I know you're gonna win, but make it seem like you're not, right?
Right,
One
right.
Punch is totally the opposite. He's always going to, seemingly always going to win, but he's so over the top with his strength that it's comical. It's hilarious how strong he is and the things that he gets into because he doesn't really understand. Like the one of the characters who sees him as like this powerful martial artist.
Hmm.
He's like, how did you become this way? And he's like, oh, I just ran every day and did push-ups. He's like, what? how, how, Sway? How? Like, how did you do
Yeah.
that? That doesn't make any sense. He's like, yeah, I just did push-ups. Yeah, it's whatever. Like what?
But
I
okay,
recommend
yeah.
those two
Mm,
anime. It's great. It's hilarious.
yeah.
Just over the top shenanigans. It's awesome.
That's a good one. That's definitely a good one. I know for me, I feel that a great entry anime for this is this is really for someone who is not necessarily looking to get into anime, because I think that if you have the desire to watch anime, you'll be able to. There are many titles out there which you will end up watching and you'll love, and you'll be like, okay, yeah, I'm really happy. I wanted to do this, so yay, this wasn't so hard. But for
Right.
people who really have an aversion to anime, and those, we know that those people exist, they're not listening right now. Like it's and they're all our friends and they're all our family, so we all know this. We
Right.
talked about this last week. I do feel that a great anime is Monster. It's by Naoki Urasawa. Um, and I think that this anime was actually so good that they wanted to create it into a live action that was supposed to be on HBO. A bunch of, I guess, some things happened where they couldn't get the studio and the creator and the person they wanted to run the show all together. I believe they wanted Guillermo del Toro to run the show, and they couldn't get everybody at the same time. And so this HBO dropped it, and Guillermo del Toro ended up moving on to another movie, which actually ended up coming out. And then Naoki Urasawa, I think he had other projects that he was working on too, so it didn't happen, which makes me extremely sad because this is a thriller suspense. So almost anybody out there, any person, any regular person on the street likes thriller suspense. I mean, everybody liked something like, even though The Matrix is definitely an action movie, it's still had a thrill suspense factor to it.
Oh
Um,
yes.
you
Especially
know,
the first part.
exactly.
The
The
beginning of the
first,
film where he's being chased.
yes, exactly. And there's so many things in that genre that people already enjoy, that people already watch on regular TV, and so I think it's a great genre for anime to break into. So I haven't watched this in so long. I honestly, I watched it when it came out on TV, or like, okay, back in the day when I was downloading stuff. So anyway, um, so I watched it
Right.
back then. It was amazing. I remember getting my friend into it, even though she already watched anime. Like, she was always coming to me asking what she should watch, because you end up wasting your time on, like what you were just saying, Kenny, about stuff that's really popular may not be great. And there were so many things that like ADV used to dub back in the day that were really popular, but they weren't great. And yeah, it felt like a waste of time to watch back then. And I was like,
Right.
this one was great. It's like 75 episodes, and I haven't watched it for so long, so like I hate to like mess up the story, but it's basically about a Japanese doctor who lives in Germany, and he's like the best doctor in that hospital as a neurosurgeon, and he's in a relationship with the head of the hospital's daughter, and they're supposed to get married. So you can see how prestigious his role is. He's like trying to be the head neurosurgeon at this hospital. He may end up being the chief if he obviously marries the chief's daughter. And his life can only get better from there. He's a Japanese man living in Germany. His life's going to be wonderful. And all until he has to make the choice of a gunshot victim who's a child coming in, or a very important man who just had a heart attack. And if you're a doctor, what do you do? Like, if the
Mm.
chief is saying, "Hey, I need you to save this old man's life because he's an important person in what the government, or he's important to me," and that's supposed to be your new, about to be your father-in-law, or some kid who came in, like somebody who's like, "Hey, this, you know, this 10-year-old kid, I forgot how old he actually is, has a gunshot wound to the head. He's not dead. Can you save him?" And you have to, this is your choice, like you're a doctor and somebody's saying you need to choose who to save. We know that doctors have to deal with this kind of stuff every day, but obviously this is the drama, the forthcoming drama that's going to propel the remainder of the story, and it's 75 episodes. So it's long in the sense that it's not your regular, 25 episode show or something, but it's worth every episode. And I rarely say that because we all know that there's a formula in animes. Like sometimes they can start off out the gate and they're great and they drop somewhere in the middle and maybe they pick up again. But we can all say this. So many animes had horrible endings. Like the last episode was
Yes.
terrible. Like you're like,
Yeah.
what? Look, we put ourselves all the way through Kenshin just to have that last episode. We're like, what just happened?
Yeah, that was rough.
We're like, why did you do this to us? Why did I do that? But again, I haven't watched a show for forever, but back then I remember watching it and saying to myself and then my friends who I ended up getting to watch it, I said that was possibly the most perfect anime I've ever seen. Perfect. And I don't say that often. I have favorite animes out there, but I can't call them perfect. I can pick out their flaws. It was like 75 episodes of perfection. I was on the edge of my seat all the time. I was just like, wow, wow, wow. You sometimes you don't think you can get much more wow unless you're like a Doge Shibe. Like much more wow, wow, very wow. Like it's great. So again, it's called Monster. And it is by Naoki Urasawa. It is amazing. If you want to read it, the manga is out there. It's fully released. The anime is out there. I do not know where you can watch it. Maybe outside of Crunchyroll. I don't. I definitely know that it is not on Hulu and it's not on Netflix. But it should be somewhere. You should be able to find it. So I definitely recommend that. Um,
Sounds good.
yeah,
Sounds good.
love that one.
So, now that we have those recommendations out, there's some things that I think, depending on your tastes, you might want to stay away from. And those are things that we call, well, at least on the more, I guess, PG side of things,
Mm.
where some of the anime has like a lot of fan service.
Hmm.
And for those who don't know what fan service is, they're usually like upskirts or close up of like breasts or
Boobs.
just things that make you feel weird when you're watching an anime and then like someone walks in the room, like you can't explain, like I this is not what I was intending this to
Yeah.
be, type of thing. um Definitely things that you want to be mindful of if you jump in, and these are like the ones that we are mentioning don't have this sort of thing,
Yeah.
for the most part.
For the
and
most part, yeah.
and it's something, it's interesting in that, um this being a phenomenon with anime, because there's the more like adult stuff, and then there's like the fan service stuff where I'm kind of I kind of don't know what the intent is.
Mm.
uh I mean, we were talking off air about an article that talks about uh what it, for men who indulge in such things, and what it means when, with anime, like what you can learn from men, basically.
Mhm.
And for me, it's just immaturity.
Mhm.
But even on that end, it's like, what is the purpose in some of these uh, shows? For
Right.
instance, one show that I really liked to an extent was High School of the Dead, and it was a short. It wasn't something that was supposed to be going like ongoing. It was like it has a beginning and an end, and it was really cool in the sense that these students they got together and band together to fight these zombies that just kind of sprung up, and there was a whole lot of tension with the characters, because it was like like a regular day, and all of a sudden there's zombies everywhere, and
Mhm.
having to figure out like where they fit in, because there's a whole idea of like class, right? So they have really rich students and students who are kind of poor, and so they grouping up with the rich kids because they have their houses usually have like, gated fences and stuff like that. So you can use that as a kind of a stronghold versus the people who kind of just lived, where anybody can just walk up to their house, so to
Mhm.
speak.
Mhm.
But then the idea of like, who's in charge or who's more important, uh, because of how much money you had or your status, and so like I'm the person who gets to eat first type of thing, and that it was really interesting, alongside the zombies and fighting and all the other good stuff.
Mm.
But then there's moments where it's like extreme fan service
Yeah.
where I was like, I'm not. Is this trying to turn me on?
Yeah.
'Cause this is not working. And then it's also the idea that I'm watching, like younger people, and I know that's a thing in horror. Everything from Friday the 13th to Nightmare on Elm Street. It's all about the teens and
Mhm.
them getting into different, I guess, sinful acts, and then the monster or whoever kills them because of it, sort of a thing. Like that's a trope, right?
Yeah.
But with anime, it's weird because it was like fixated on these things, and it
Yeah.
didn't really do anything for the characters. It didn't really do anything, I guess, really for the viewer. It was just like there. And I was like, do people really enjoy this sort of thing? And so
Yeah.
that'd be interesting to kind of talk about, like, what is that about? Like, why is that a thing in anime? I don't
Mhm.
understand. And maybe it's different because a lot of the fan service I've seen has been as an adult.
Mhm.
And so like this might be something that's more geared to younger people, but then at the same time it's made by adults. So it's like,
Yeah,
mm,
it is.
it's like, and I, because I clearly know the line when it comes to the the stuff that is adult, the
Mhm.
hentai and stuff like that. Like I clearly know that line, right? And there's a reason for that. But the other stuff, it just doesn't. It just seems out of place and unnecessary.
Yeah.
Uh, so I'm kind of curious, like, what are your thoughts on that sort of thing?
It's interesting because I remember when I was working at the anime store, and that's when Iki Tosen came out. Iki Tosen was actually popular at that time. And again, I started working at the anime store and I didn't know a lot of these other animes. I knew what I knew, like what I had grown up with and what I had found out, but when I worked at the anime store, I learned so many more. So
Wait, is it called the Anime Store?
no, it was called Anime FX.
Oh, okay, okay. I
Yeah,
was like,
back in
it's
the
called the
day.
Anime Store. Okay, it's
Yeah,
real on the
I'm
nose.
sorry. It's like I call it the anime store. Like everybody knows what I'm talking about. Like people listening, they're like, we don't even know where you live, and I'm like, and that's a good thing. So
Right.
the point is, so I used to work at this anime store, and at that time, Iki Tolson was popular, like back in 2004 or something like that, and um, it was since it was popular in the store, I had to start watching it. I was at least trying to catch it, like when it was available, because back then we had DVDs and there was still some stuff on VHS that we had in the store, but we had DVDs and it was checked out a lot. The copies were checked out a lot, and so I tried to catch them when I did. And I finally started watching this show. Before I did that, I would talk to one of the customers who was a regular, and the person was like, it was two people, I remember. I think it was a guy and a girl. It was like, yeah, it's a good show except for all the fan service. And I was like, I didn't even know what fan service meant at that time. I was like 21 years old. Yeah, I was like 21 or 22 years old back then. And I was like, I didn't even know what fan service meant. I did not know. I was like, huh? And then I found out. And I was like, oh, yeah, fansabisu, like what they say in Japanese. And I'm like, I mean, give the fans what they want. Apparently, the fans want boobs and pictures of underwear, underwear shots. Like, apparently, I'm like, that's not what I was asking for. I
Right.
wasn't. I just wanted more shots of Seishomaru in Inuyasha. That was my fan service. Okay, I just wanted him to be in more scenes. Why didn't we get more scenes? Somebody please answer. Why didn't Seishomaru get more scenes? Okay? Rumiko Takahashi sama.
Like,
Why didn't you have a separate show just for Seishomaru? I'm going to let her answer that question when she finally listens to this podcast. Moving on. Um, anyway, Ikitosen was this show that, if I remember correctly, because again, it was a long time ago, I haven't seen this in forever, but it was basically like these high schools and these kids that were in these high schools that had superpowers, and they would fight each other. And I mean, they would either go to each other's school and battle and just like beat the crap out of each other to the point where you thought someone was dead. They had super crazy moves, but the girls, it was majority girls that I remember that were doing all the fighting. And guys fought too, but I just remember the girls were like super, super fighting. And every time someone got hit in the chest, their shirt would just rip open. And it was like, okay, was that the intent? And this was obviously the intention. If you wanted her shirt to rip, why didn't you just rip her shirt? But the fact that it had to be this drawn out move, like, she got kicked in the chest because you were fighting, and then her shirt just rips open. And they're like, okay, wonderful, great. Or like just the zoom in when somebody decided to put somebody in a chokehold and they put one arm around the girl's neck and then the other one like right under her chest. And it's like, okay, well, that's nice. And it just happened. But by the way, Iki Tosen was extremely hilarious because it was basically based off of the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, which is a very famous historical history of China's three kingdoms, Wu, Wei, and Shu.
Yep.
And so these the people from those, like the fighters, the warriors from back in that time, were reborn into these students in these schools. So if you're familiar with Dynasty Warriors, the video game, basically those characters like Cao Cao and Dian Wei and all of those fighters were reborn into these students. And so obviously, if you remember, if you played the game, you would know that like um, the one with the red horse, the dude with the red horse, he was one of the three brothers, a member of the Shu family. And he was at one time held captive of Wei. And so when he had to fight like Cao Cao, um, basically the students who were reborn with those two characters ended up meeting each other and they would fight right there. So that was the whole premise of them fighting. But the fan service was ridiculous. It was just out of control. I mean, the things that were happening were like, wow, I can't even believe they like that made it on TV. Like that actually, I mean, like it gets graphic. Like there's honestly, like if I'll just explain it. There's this part where I can't remember what happened, where one of the girls was fighting. I can't remember if she was fighting a guy or a girl. I actually don't remember, because I do remember that two of them were a guy and this other girl were a couple. And I think I don't remember if they used to fight, but one of them fought like another girl and like had her in this hold, and she ended up peeing on herself because she was in this
Wow.
horrible hold. And I'm like, is this on like is this on TV? What did you know what I mean? I was completely like, did this just happen? But aside from all of that nonsense, the story was super entertaining.
So
And
that's how they get you with the story, right?
I know, because I really wanted to see the fight. Like I wanted them to fight, and especially when they were talking about the fact that these characters were fighting. If Zhang He, the way that Zhang He actually Zhang He, sorry, dies in the Three Kingdoms is that he ends up getting stuck in a what do you call it, not a valley, but like kind of like a very narrow path, and he was cut off on both sides in an ambush, and that's how he died. And he was an amazing, great warrior. And so like that character in the show would have had like a fight in which the same thing, a similar thing would happen. So it was a good premise, but I guess they thought their story wasn't great enough. They just needed everybody to be naked. As
But it's
I,
it's weird because it's almost like you're trying to be sneaky,
yeah,
where or because it's like I don't know, like the way it would happen, like the people will be put in these weird positions
yeah,
for that to happen, and it's like I don't. I get what you're trying to do, but
yeah,
I don't know, and it could be like you said, we kind of saw these things a little older, where I guess someone who was younger would obviously,
yeah,
I
like a
it's
teenager.
it would be understandable where the mindset is, but I just don't understand that there's a market for something when there's the worst available. If you know what I'm trying to say, like there's something more. So
Right,
what is the
exactly.
point? Because it's like you're being giddy or you're hiding or you're like, ha ha ha, look what I did.
Yeah.
Maybe to get it on TV, but there was plenty of avenues. I mean, when I saw stuff like Ninja Scrolls, which is obviously more adult.
Yeah,
That
that's not
was
even fair. That
on
doesn't even qualify as fan service.
exactly right, and that was on like I think it was HBO. Um, I
Yeah.
think it was at one time HBO was showing anime, and I think it was another channel that would
Uh,
do it like
um,
every Saturday.
what
Uh,
was it? Sci-fi.
oh right, right. They would also have anime too, and so I would hear like Vampire Hunter D and stuff like that. Like I would see.
Hmm.
So it was different because that was obviously like an adult situation, and
Yeah,
so
definitely.
adult things happen
Yeah.
versus someone tripped all of a sudden. Like it
Exactly.
was like, what are we doing here? Like are you you're playing with me? Like so it seems like like I don't understand.
I
Uh
guess that's the definition, though. It's just like there's this idea that this is what the fans want. It's kind of like, cheerleaders at a football game. We're here to watch a bunch of dudes like crack skulls, but then these cheerleaders come out in these little outfits and then they dance and make everything better. Honestly, I still don't get it. I don't. I can understand if you're like if your purpose is to get the crowd hype and just be like, yeah, because you're doing a really cool routine. But I
right.
still never understand the whole purpose of the cheerleaders on the sideline who are just dancing. They have to be there for a certain reason. Whoever is not doesn't care about the actual football game has to just they have. I guess there has to be something for everybody somewhere. And some of these shows are like, I guess to keep certain people interested, this is what we need to do. Uh, uh, like I just wanted more Seishomaru in Inuyasha scenes. That's what I wanted. That's what I asked for. That's what I wanted. That's what I asked for.
Uh the claps are real. The claps what why where is he? Like yes,
Okay, we got a whole movie. Side note, we got a whole movie talking about backstory. We got Inu Papa with that deep voice and whatnot. You had Seishomaru trying to fight his dad for the swords and whatnot. And then we still did not get an entire series for Seishomaru. He is one of the deepest characters in the entire show. It's okay though. It's okay, Takahashi-san. Takahashi-sama. I got you. I already wrote the joint. I just need you to read it, and then we can make it into
we have
okay.
fan fiction
It's
like
yes.
mm,
You're like, wait a, wait a. Mm.
so that or was him or what's the dude from Sailor Moon Mask? What's his
A
name?
tuxedo mask.
Yes.
Tuxedo mask. I have problems with tuxedo mask. To be fair, I mean, I do. He
I
was
think
like
everyone does.
I mean, he's like 20 something years old. He's like a med student. He's like 24 years old and they're 14 years old. I'm really, really concerned of what's really happening there.
Well, see, okay, so that brings me to another thing. With that, I was watching, and actually I got made fun of because of this, but I was watching, what is it? Goblin Hunter. No,
Mhm.
Goblin Killer. Is that what is it called?
I don't know.
I think it's Goblin Hunter.
Mm.
Goblin
We can Google it.
Hunter.
Yeah, let's find what does Google say? Google
Okay,
says,
I believe it's no Goblin Slayer. There you go.
okay.
Told you I'm bad with names. Whatever. So yeah,
Goblin.
like it was the thing with Goblin Slayer, I think the fantasy setup is really cool. There's the idea that these uh
Well, there goes the dog.
it seems like to me from like just outside looking in, it's like a MMO in a sense where you have these characters who are you have mages, you have warriors, you have clerics or whatever the case may be, and they go out and they take on tasks,
Yeah.
and a lot of it is has to do with slaying some type of monster or whatever. At least that's how the premise starts off. And
Yeah.
one of the characters is the Goblin Slayer, and
Yeah.
apparently he has a interesting backstory with the goblins, and he just goes and kills them all, regardless of babies, whatever. He just kills them all, right?
Yeah.
But and so the setup is actually really cool, but for whatever reason, majority of the characters look like children, and so the
Yeah.
things that happen affect me like I can't just get over certain things.
Mhm. Mhm.
The first episode actually has a rape, and in
Ugh.
and not to sound morbid or to sound like, I guess, just bad, lack of a better term, but there's worse depictions of rape
Right.
in anime, I was talking about Ninja Scrolls,
Yes.
yeah, right. And so, but this, it was like, it's the person looks like they could have been 14, 15 maybe,
And that's not good.
and I was like, yo, and it's not cool, period.
Yeah.
But if you have a story that's going to depict like something horrible, at least make it adult based.
Yeah.
Um, and not to say that it doesn't happen in real life or that it
Yeah.
can happen. It's the idea that everybody is this, it's they're like adult chibis, if you will. And I couldn't get past that episode. I was like, I
Yeah.
can't, like I have daughters. I have, it just doesn't, it doesn't sit well. And other people are like, well, have you seen Berserk and have you seen all these other? It's like, yo, I've seen a lot
Yeah.
of crazy stuff in my
Mhm.
anime run,
Mhm.
but it's usually not. They don't, at least from what I've seen, not everyone is children or like babyish.
Right.
That was
Exactly.
one thing that I had an issue with. Sword Art Online, the first one
Okay,
was
good. That's a
similar.
great, that's something to discuss. Yes.
Yeah, and it was like, the story is interesting and everything, but then you have this character and spoilers. Okay, I'm just gonna say spoilers for
Yes.
Sword Art Online.
Mhm.
It's an older anime, so if you, yeah, there's a portion where, because they're stuck in this Matrix-like world, and one of the characters is in the hospital. So like she's in, all the people that are playing are in comas,
Mm.
and they're stuck in their VR space or whatever.
Yeah.
And one of the persons is, I don't know, was he a caretaker or like a doctor? Um,
Um, the guy, you mean the one who is keeping her locked up?
right.
He's so he has a relation to her father, and her father owns the hospital.
There you go. And,
So yeah, that's how he comes about.
and so like he's able, and for whatever reason, he's able to jump in and out of the virtual space,
Yeah.
and so he keeps her locked in, so she can't escape. Like the other people who are, once they beat the game, they're able to leave, and she can't. And so she's in a coma, but he's keeping in her in there to be like his wife,
Right.
uh, even though she's a young girl in real life.
Right.
And it's like, what are we doing? And
Yeah.
in that sense, it didn't bother me in the sense of like a story, because it was like, this is a horrible thing, and they treat
Yeah.
him as horrible. It's not
Yeah.
like he's glorified, he's all, whatever. I
Exactly.
felt like with Goblin Slayer, it was more of a sensationalized type of thing,
Mm.
uh, where it's like, even though you know that these people are, or the goblins are bad, it was like you're supposed to be, possibly be aroused by what's happening.
Right.
And it was like, that's, both are, bad, but if you're going to put it in a story, make, this is good, this is right, this is wrong, like a clear line of what's right and wrong. Don't try to entice people, especially with a childlike individual. That just, it's weird, like, and I know it's gotten a little bit of flack. I don't know if the manga is the same, but I know
Mhm.
it's gotten, online and forums and whatnot, people are, I wasn't the only one that was weirded out. I'll just say that.
Yeah,
um
that's
so
disturbing.
I'm like, and that seems to be a trend, uh with certain anime.
It's so awkward because it's like I had a discussion. It wasn't about anime, but I had a discussion with some of my work colleagues years ago. We were talking about how much more real storytelling is getting anyway in films, especially a lot of films that are getting nominated and things like that. And even just darker stories because they are realistic. Like these bad things do happen to young women, just and young people in general. And it's like the thing is when you're an author, you have the ability to tell a story and say, is this bad thing that is happening to this young person a catalyst for the story? Like, and and is there some sort of retribution that happens, to the person who has done the wrong? Like, do we get revenge? Do we get our vengeance in the end on this person who did the horrible deed to this young individual? And it's like if that doesn't happen, if there is not a real cause, Like, we need to be, first of all, if you're going to show us this terrible thing with this young person, it needs to be so bad that us as the audience are torn, not in a way that is like, should I be watching this? It's like, oh my God, this is horrible. I want to cry. I can't even relate, but if I could, like, if this, I have a child, or I have friends, or I have nieces or nephews or anything like that, and it's like, oh, I can, I it's not even that I empathize or sympathize, because this is horrible and this should never happen. And because this happened, I need to find out what happens in the rest of the story. Is it that type of event, or is it just there to be gross? And
Yeah,
that's where I want creators, artists, and writers to ask themselves that question before it gets put in. Because if you want something to be in there because it has shock value, and that's fine, but please don't use a younger person.
I mean, even then, it's like, what is the intent? Even if it's part of the story, like, is that
Yeah,
you're supposed to be creative in the sense that you can write a way that, and not to say that any of this is justified for a story, but
yeah,
to like, there's a reason this happens,
yeah,
where you're depicting real world stuff or whatever, and there's, you know, in the sense of that, what are you trying to say while with
right,
depicting?
right,
Because we look at, an example for people who aren't into anime. If you watch Game of Thrones, there was the
right.
whole thing with
Awesome.
uh yes, and when she was married, and then that what happened there, it was like there was a lot of people who voiced like concern. Now, mind you, there had been some crazy stuff in Game of Thrones up until that point.
Right.
Um, everything from there was rape before then, but and castration and all this other stuff. And
Mhm.
so, but that scene was like a big like that was a punch, I guess, to anybody who was watching. And
Mhm.
so, granted, this person gets torn to pieces later. Um, it's still one of those things where, like, okay, what is this doing for the story?
For the
Why are these things
yeah.
happening? Can Sansa, can she become who she becomes later without this event?
With that
Like,
that was a huge conversation. I even think because I did look it up, I did look that up online, and a lot of people were saying that because that's not canon yet. At least, the Winds of Winter hasn't been released. The last two books haven't been released, so we don't know what is written for Sansa, if that's actually what's supposed to happen to her in the book, because that's not what happens in five. Like, we don't have that yet. We only have it in the show, and we were at least lucky enough to not really have to visualize it, because the actress herself was still young, you
right,
know, and so we didn't have to see it. Like, we had to visualize other things, but we didn't have to see what happened to her. But we still knew, we saw a dress rip, and we got the audio. We didn't have to see, and so at least we weren't traumatized in that manner. But
right.
it's like could she have grown, because it wasn't just Sansa who had been raped in the story. And it's like, for a writer that is supposed to be empowering women, where you have multiple women who are trying to climb the ranks and who are calling themselves queen. These are women who are ruling the world at this moment. For it to be women, it seems like the majority of them have been raped. So is the only way for a woman to gain power, or only way for a woman to put a crown on her head, is to be raped? Because that's actually what Game of Thrones, the show, ended up telling us. You cannot debate that. Like, it is accurate. It's
Which is
it's very,
crazy.
very accurate.
It's also crazy because her sister doesn't have that experience,
Right.
but becomes like an assassin. And granted, she has her own issues and things that happen to her,
Mhm.
but she doesn't have to go through that step to be
Mhm. To be
respected,
Yeah.
to be tough, I guess you could say. Whereas and then, like you were saying, it's not even in the book. Like, there's
Yeah.
another character who has a similar thing happen to them, but Sansa and her are two different people. They don't have the same experiences, the same storyline even. And
Mhm.
so it was kind of like just put there for like, and granted, for those who don't know, like the showrunners didn't know what they were doing, and there's a whole thing. They had a whole talk about, like, especially after they got to the end of the books that are written, it just went off the rails. They didn't know what they were doing, and HBO was like, "Here's money." They didn't know, so there's
Oh
that. And then
God.
also the fact that they didn't have a lot of different writers. It was mainly them. They had some people come in. here and there, but for the most part, they didn't have a diverse cast of writers, right? And
Mm.
so there's that, and that's not excusing. That's just saying that this was a cluster beforehand,
Yep.
and so with that, it was like, dude, like we didn't need this for her to become. I mean, I mean, her, and you should have seen Game of Thrones by now. Okay, spoilers.
Yeah.
The fact that her,
First of all, we're spoiling it because it's trash.
yeah, like her dad dies, her older brother dies, her mother-in-law dies, her like all these people that she knows and cares about, her kingdom is being, you know, ran afoot, and her brother, adopted brother,
Mm.
betrays them. Like there's so many things that happens
Yeah.
that we don't need this. I mean, her just being married to him, kind of like being tossed aside, was
Yeah.
basically enough.
It wasn't.
If she would have escaped that night, I would have been fine with it.
Hmm.
Uh, but it was like it was this. It just had to be demoralizing, and then it didn't even end there. Like the next
Yeah.
episode, it kind of continued, and it was like it was one of those moments where I was like, do I even want to finish this show? It's like
Yeah.
but being so invested is like but the criticism was warranted, is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, definitely.
And so the
Definitely.
same thing with like anime, although I don't think people are as critical, and it could be because it's not as popular. Like Game of Thrones is, I
Maybe.
mean,
Yeah.
even if you didn't watch the show, you know what Game of Thrones is.
Yeah.
And so
And
it
if
could
you
be
don't,
because,
we're not talking to you.
yeah, right. But like I guess because it's not huge to that extent, so there's
Hmm.
not, and I know there's circles that criticize and critique these things for anime, but not to the popularity of something like Game of Thrones. And
Right.
so there's that, the whole like, for instance, in one example, which I thought was done really well, was with The Walking Dead. I read The Walking Dead comics,
Hmm.
and in The Walking Dead, there's one of the seasons, I think it was season 4, with the governor, and
Hmm.
spoilers if you haven't seen it.
Mm.
Um, there's a part where he has Glenn and he has Maggie, and he separates them, and he's going to threaten Maggie in a way that looks like he's getting ready to rape Maggie,
Hmm.
uh, but it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
He leaves, and then he just lets Glenn think whatever he thinks, and that is his way of getting, like, breaking them to kind of get information out of them. Like that's what
Right.
he does. And but in the comic, it's actually Glenn and Michonne, and
Yeah.
he actually goes through, and it's now granted the comic is written very well. I want to stress that.
Hmm.
However, in the show, with it being a different character, with it being different circumstance, it didn't need to happen, and it
Yeah.
didn't. And that was one thing where you still get the same result, because it was like it could have happened, and so she's afraid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and what happens to Glenn and how he becomes who he becomes later
Uh-huh.
because of that still happens, but you didn't need to go that far.
Yeah.
It's the total opposite of what happened with Game of Thrones. Like,
Right.
yeah, it was needless in Game of Thrones.
So many things were needless in Game of Thrones.
But well, that's a critique of the show, especially the latter seasons. But we're not going to get into that.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother
Different
podcast.
episode. Yeah, we will
That
be doing an episode on technical difficult. Well, you and I should be technical advisors on shows because things like that shouldn't happen.
Oh my gosh. I Yeah, I'm not even. So, moving moving on.
Maybe
Uh,
not.
one of the things we wanted to talk about was representation,
Hmm.
and me and you being black, of people of color,
Hmm.
um, mainly black people for the most part, in video games and anime, and how they've changed over the years,
Yes.
for better and for worse. Interesting enough, it's in a weird spot. For video games, it's in a weird spot,
Yeah.
uh, and because it's like, for every cool character, you get a really bad character, or you get something where you can kind of see the wheels are turning.
Hmm.
Like, oh, you kind of, okay, I see what you're doing. We have a black character, but this character wasn't written by a black person, and so there's a lot of things where you're kind of like viewing
Hmm.
a person or a culture or whatever from a distance, and you kind of recognize what you see, and so you make
Hmm.
that into a character, and black people are like, mm-mm, that ain't it.
Yeah. No.
And so like there's earnest, like you're trying, but because it's not as diverse, the gaming industry isn't. super diverse, not as much as we would want.
Yes.
A lot of it is ran by older white guys. A
Hmm.
lot of it is kind of messy. But that's not to say that we haven't come a decent ways. And the
Right.
same thing with anime. Granted, anime is a little slightly different beast,
Yeah.
being that it's a different country and whatnot.
Yeah.
But there's still some similarities. I mean, if we go back to depictions of black people in like mad old anime, I mean, and and not to get super obscure for people who don't watch anime, but you've heard of Dragon Ball. I would hope
Yes.
so.
Yes.
And a lot of them, a lot of black people are depicted in a way that's like the way that, let me see, almost like a Amos and Andy, uh, the big lips, uh,
Yes.
super black. Like there's no like tonality for the most part.
Right.
They look, they look kind of messed up, and a lot of them don't have good roles. They're usually bad guys,
Hmm.
or some type of, they're not as intelligent. And then if we fast forward a little bit to like Dragon Ball Z, we have the infamous Mr. Popo, who's all the way black with does he have red lips?
Yes, he does have red lips.
Yeah, and
We're gonna need to put up graphics.
yes. And so for Mr. Popo, and that's essentially blackface. Now I'm not saying that the creator created him to be blackface, or that the creator is racist or whatever. Maybe not informed on certain things, uh, and especially with the fact that Mr. Popo came out in a time where there wasn't Twitter and things like that,
Mm,
or he couldn't, they can't be canceled in that sense.
mm.
Uh, he looks kind of bad, and aside the fact from like he has elf ears and stuff like that, yeah, it's a totally black person in an anime that looks kind of
Yeah.
rough. It, it
Yeah.
just it just is.
With a turban.
It's all over the place. And this is not just with anime. I mean, I'm pretty sure people can bring up issues with Haji on uh Johnny Quest, and issues of, or problems with actually with The Simpsons. I know they were taking out the guy from the Quickie Mart. There was a whole issue with that, and how people, there's this idea that like the Simpsons, they make fun of everybody, and so like this is another caricature of Indian people, or whatever the case may be. And fail I guess a lot of people fail to realize that if a lot of your depictions are negative,
Yes.
this show that might be somewhat positive in the fact that it discriminate, or not discriminates, that's the wrong word, but the fact that it makes fun of everyone, it doesn't change the fact that this is yet another show that makes fun of you.
Yeah.
And so it's easy to be like, well, they make fun of white people too. Well, yeah, but there's a ton of shows that don't. So it's a decent give and take,
Hmm.
where it's just like stereotypical black guy, stereotypical black guy. Oh, this show makes fun of everybody, and there's a stereotypical black guy. Doesn't work. Doesn't work. Uh, but there's like so there's and now so today there's still some kind of, so there's still some messiness.
Yes.
If we slide over to the video games, there is the, I forget the guy from Final Fantasy 13, the black guy with the chocobo in his afro. So he has a chicken in his afro.
So disappointing.
Yes. There's the girl from Arms who fights with her hair, and that
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you talk about that in a sec, because I,
Yeah.
I think you would have a better you're better armed, if you will.
I'm
No
better
pun,
armed.
no
No
pun
pun
intended.
intended.
Better armed to take. So, but
Mm.
it's interesting. It's interesting to see, and because the idea of this segment isn't necessarily to get upset.
No.
It's just to bring some things to light and to talk about the differences and things that we've seen. And a lot of it is like, it's like you're getting there, you're
Yeah.
almost there, and then you fumble at the last second.
What?
Uh, and so that's those are some of the things we want to look into right now.
Right.
Um, and so going over to the video game side, we
Hmm.
have some bad representation, some good representation. Um, and so just a few that stood out, and this one stands out. The character that was in Arms,
Hmm.
because it's recent. Same
Yes.
thing with the DLC character from Tekken, uh, Leroy. We're gonna get into him too.
Oh, yes.
Uh, but it's recent. I think her name is Twintella.
Yeah, you sent me that.
Yeah, and she fights, she has arms. Everyone
Yeah.
in the game has arms, but she fights with her hair. And on the outside looking in, it's like, oh, this is cool because it's different. Like
Mhm.
everybody else fights with their arms, she fights with her hair. She's gonna be a new character,
Mhm.
and but then it's being a black person. It's like,
Yeah. And it's kind of like, as far as we are, this character came out what, like 2017, and it's like, okay, it's 2017 Nintendo. All right, like
right,
I know that, again, these characters are being created in Japan, but come on, that's not really an excuse. And so, it's like, I and on one hand, so I can approach this from two segments. She is a black girl, and her hair is a weapon. Now, it's like, okay, yay, we're happy, black girl, badass, woohoo! But it's her hair, dude, and we have been
yeah,
moving on as we progress through time, and we're getting, I mean, this is 2017. It has already been public all over television and articles and all kinds of things about black women in hair, and how black women in hair our hair has been demonized, our hair has been weaponized against us for such a long period of time. And so to create a character whose hair is a weapon, it's like I can see where the positive part is, where you're like, oh, we're going to turn this girl's hair into a weapon, and it's her strength, and she's strong, and she's beating people up with her hair, and da da
right,
da, and yay. But it's like, okay, no. If, have a test group, call a test group of 12 black women and say, do you guys agree with this? And they'll all say no. Like, no, just don't do it. And this is why. When I was a child, okay, and I have, relatively thick hair. Um, I had, had my hair braided. Obviously, grew up as a little black child in the 80s. Oh crap, I told my age again. We got barrettes and those things with the balls on it. Okay, so this woman, she basically has her hair in pigtails. So we
right.
had our hair braided, we had plaits, and then we would have the barrettes on the end to keep our hair from unraveling. And then we had the things around our pigtails, which I don't remember what we called them, but they had these balls on them, and they were connected to rubber bands, like these strong rubber bands, which had a metal clasp in the inside and these balls on the end. And so you had to twist them around your hair and put the balls through the holes so that they would hold. Everybody knows how snappy a rubber band is. A rubber band snaps, it hurts. Those balls, if your mom or auntie or sister or whoever was putting that thing in your hair, and they like let it go, they stretched it and let it go, and that ball hit you wherever, if it was in your head, if it was on your face, that thing hurt. Okay? You know what
Yeah,
also was bad? Was when the person doing the hair, your auntie, your mom, or your sister, was doing it, and then the ball hit her. Then she was mad and then probably hit you in the head. Okay? And so there was a lot of anger and abuse that went along with getting your hair done as a little black girl. Okay? So there's a lot of pain in there already. Moving on. Not only was it painful to get your hair done, but then you had to go to school. Okay? And you had to play with other kids, so other kids
yeah,
could be mean about your hair because they didn't understand. Because if you were a child who was not of African descent or did not have curly or kinky hair, and your hair was straight, and you could do all kinds of things like go run in a sprinkler and not get in trouble, or all those kind of things, like,
hmm
they had
hmm
questions, and little kids like me weren't equipped to protect ourselves. And then we also had to deal with people of our own race who had straighter hair, and who also were like, had maybe issues with the kinkiness of our hair. Anyway, there's a lot of history and pain and trauma that goes along with black girls and women with their hair. Moving on to the point where, as I got older, um, when I had braids, like, there were kids in my class who like treated my hair as a weapon, because like, if I spun my head really fast, my braids might hit somebody. And then they'd be like, ouch, oh my God, you just hit me with your hair. Your hair's a weapon. And then I had a lot of kids who would call me Whoopi. Now, my close friends who called me Whoopi, it was cute. It was fine. But there were other kids who called me Whoopi Goldberg just because they're like, oh, you have braids, even though she had dreads at the time. And they were trying to be hurtful. So there's a lot of things about, black hair that it's not, there's pain and there's trauma and there's meanness and bullying that goes along with it. So yes, was my hair called a weapon by other kids who were trying to be mean? Yes. Was it called a weapon by some kids who were trying to be funny? Yes. Was it called a weapon by people who were close to me? They were my friends and I accidentally hit them with my hair when I was moving really quickly? Yes. Have I called my own hair a weapon because I have dreadlocks down to my butt and I have jewels in my hair? And when I swing my hair, because, sometimes I do it, not because I'm showing off, but because I might think I see a spider in a corner and I turn my head really quickly. And then I hit my face, I hit my eye with the jewel that's on the end of my dreadlock. And then I'm like, oh my God, my hair is a weapon. That hurt. But nobody else was around when that happened. Okay. So nobody needs to know that personally I might call my hair a weapon. So when they decide that they wanted to come out and make this character whose hair was a weapon, I feel kind of hurt
Well,
somewhere
and then
inside of me.
well, there's also the idea that like, because a lot of times it would be called a weapon when it wasn't. It was
Exactly.
something that's something that could happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe on the off chance. I mean, because someone's ponytail can hit you, so hit, you know, a white girl's ponytail can hit you in the eye, and it's like that's uncomfortable.
Yes.
I could say that's a weapon, but it's the
Hmm.
idea that a person's natural styling of hair
Yeah.
is considered is different, and so
Hmm.
because of that it is looked at as something that
Hmm.
we have to push away from,
Yeah.
uh, to the point of weaponizing in the sense that not just weaponizing where it's like she can't wear beads or whatever in her hair because she could potentially hit someone, boo,
Hmm.
um, or the idea that like you know what, you have dreads. And regardless if it has anything to do with your culture, your upbringing, whatever, you
Hmm.
can't have dreads because the school code is blah 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 blah, and
Exactly.
it looks unkempt, and it's blah, and it's this, that, and the third, and it has really nothing to do with the hair. It
Yeah.
has more so to do with the person, because the
Hmm.
way for instance, there was an article recently about a student who has dreads. I
Yes.
think his dad is from he's from Trinidad,
Hmm.
and so
Yep.
that's where they wear their hair, and he's not able to walk when he graduates. He was
Exactly.
suspended and all this other stuff, and it was like the school code and all this other stuff, and it's like, well, when you start asking questions, it starts to poke holes in it, like the fact that a lot of the girl's hair is longer than his,
Yeah.
or the fact that he's had his hair for since I want to say the first year or the second year that he
Exactly.
was
Not.
there, all the way up till now,
Nothing.
and it's never been an issue. The fact that it is kept up nice, the fact that he is a good student and he's done everything he's supposed to do in school, and all he wants to do is walk, and he can't because of his hair. And when the fact that like we can't, I remember like when I graduated from college, uh, I had an afro, mainly
Hmm.
because I couldn't afford to pay for a haircut um, at the
Just
time.
no, just kidding.
Yeah, and the fact that like I didn't want to. I I used to, short story. I would go to a barber all the time, my same barber for like years, and then he retired.
Hmm.
And my dad would cut my hair, but then when I was in college, I lived away. And so I didn't want to go to anybody else, and I definitely didn't want to pay more to go to someone else. And
Right.
so I just let my hair grow out. And so I had an afro. And my mom, when I left college, or graduated, I should say, I graduated, I got a diploma. Um, when my mom, when I was going to get a job, my mom was like, "You should cut your hair." And what she was
Hmm.
saying was that what I didn't realize at the time was that when she was younger, she had an afro,
Yes.
and it kept her from getting a job.
Yes.
And she was like, what I was hearing was that, your hair doesn't look nice, you should cut it. But what she was actually saying is, I don't think you're going to get a job because they're looking for, someone to look more white.
Hmm.
Cut your hair, it's, they're gonna see it and they're gonna think it's nappy, even though it's shaped nice and all this other stuff. They're not going to, they're not gonna hire you. And I was like, nope, not happening. I'm keeping my hair, and I've never had an issue with my hair, in terms of getting a job. But I'm blessed in that sense.
Yes.
Uh, And so there's a lot of when it comes to weaponizing hair,
Yeah.
just the term or the concept of weaponizing black hair, there's a lot of history of this thing, uh, or that phrase being used against us in a
Hmm.
way that make us seem less than. So in this sense, we look at this, and I don't think Nintendo is a horrible develop or company or anything like that. I don't think
Oh.
they meant anything. But what I think is that they need to have someone there who can say, you know what, I kind of get that this seems cool, but there's some things that you should know about in terms of your audience, because a lot of black people play Nintendo games. Uh, in the sense that this wasn't something where this character was taking back her power, that she was like, I'm going to fight with my hair because of the way I was treated. This was like a cool thing, a black
Hmm.
person, because it seems like someone is like, oh, that black person has dreads. It'd be interesting if they fought with them.
Mm.
And it's like, that's not right, fam. Like
Yeah.
you might want to think that through. And and so in that sense, it's like it was interesting to me because I can kind of see, I understand where people are like, you're making a big deal out of nothing, and this isn't a big, this is a really cool character, but there's a lot of nuance to us. There's a lot
Yeah.
of nuance to having us depicted in a way that we feel respected, we feel included, we feel, you know, as something that's not an after statement or an afterthought or an after, like we're just gonna throw this in to make you, to please you people. uh, some real thought, just like any other character. And I can't speak on any type of stereotypes that are from the other
Yeah.
characters that are on board,
Hmm.
but I can speak on the ones that are mine. And that's one that totally comes to mind in terms of you kind of missed the mark there. Another one, and again, these are current examples because, like I said, we've come a long way, but we have these examples. The next one is Leroy Smith. Tekken.
Leroy.
That if that's not the most like, come on, fam,
I
Leroy Smith,
Leroy. Come on.
and don't get it twisted. Like, I like so one of my favorite movies is The Last Dragon.
We love it.
Leroy, obviously Leroy Green, main character.
Hmm.
Uh, the difference is outside of depiction and everything. I mean, Leroy's not in the game, but it was done by, it was written by a black person, and the stereotypes that are there or the things that are shown are with an understanding of who we are. And so a lot of things are, not to say that these stereotypes are never real, the stereotypes coming from a real place, but it's depicted in a way that is we can understand, or we can it's not something that like is harmful, like an image that's harmful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's also like the idea of the other cultures, the kung fu cultures that they or the Chinese or Japanese or whatever that they pull from for the story, and how they depict it in a way that's us.
Hmm.
So even though that they're borrowing from other places, one of his favorite films in the film is Bruce Lee's crap. It just fell out of my head, but he likes Bruce Lee,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
excuse me,
Because he fights
it's
in the Wing Chun style.
exactly, he pulls from that and makes it himself. Leroy is always himself. He's
Yeah.
never pretending to be Asian, that sort of thing, right? And
Hmm.
so there's a lot of play in terms of stereotypes in the film, but they're written in a way that people they're okay with. We're in on the joke. We're in on it. You know what I mean? Uh, whereas Leroy Smith in Tekken, like,
Mm.
if you have a chance to Google this person,
Yeah. In fact, everybody just Google him right now.
he has. I'm trying to like him.
We're
I'm trying
trying.
to like him
We are.
because he has, his style of martial arts is really cool. He has dreads, but then at a certain point, I'm like, he has tattoos everywhere. He has gold. He has like kind of like a like a, I don't know if it's a gi, not a gi, but like a Chinese. He has a Oriental fit, if you will. But then he has like gaiters, a pimp
Yeah.
cane.
I don't understand that.
Like, what were you going for with this character? And mind you, Tekken is all over the place. I mean, you fight angels and devils, okay? Like,
Yeah.
it's bananas. But what? And there's other and like with Tekken, there are other black characters that are I think that are better, like in
Yeah.
terms of like who they are as a character. But Leroy, his generic name, uh, his backstory, like he's from New York,
Yeah.
and he's just it's just there's a whole lot of
Andy has a pit bull. Like, come on. What
there's a
kind of
whole lot of
basic black dude is he?
there's a whole lot of mm-mm. Like if all of the like I said, you fight bears and robots and assassins and cyborgs and all this other stuff and ninjas like Raven, he's basically Blade, right? But then you have this dude and it's like what happened? What happened in the process of developing his character that I mean, and just reading his backstory and like I just don't get it. And so like when you look at him, it's like Tekken or like the developer, excuse me, Bandai Namco, like they were trying to make a cool character. Like you could cool, it should be written there, like Leroy Cool Smith, like that. They wanted him to be a cool black character, right? And so it seems like they took what they could from black stuff that they knew about and just put it on this character. Like
Hmm.
tattoos are in right now. So give him a ton of tattoos. And black people like gold, right? So put a big chain around his neck and give him a pimp cane because apparently we like pimps and some gators,
And
but then
Gator.
also have him like, in a whole kung fu get up. Throw some shades and some dreads on him and boom. Like that's
Yeah.
our man. And
That's
I'm
our
like
dude.
and I'm just like, like what happened? What happened? And it's not like Leroy from The Last Dragon. It's not like um heck, even like, if we look at other fighting games that are hip hop based or hip
Yeah.
hop inspired, like the Wu-Tang game or, Def Jam Vendetta or, where there's black people who are hip hop that are
Yeah.
doing martial arts and stuff like that, or, like Wu-Tang, it's very much like I don't even think Wu-Tang would be cool. Like
Hmm.
I don't think the RZA would be like I could design you a better character, fam. I
Yeah.
could design a better character than this.
Yeah.
Uh, he's just a bunch of random stereotypes. It's not even like a they don't fit together well even.
It's like they just threw in the kitchen sink. That's what they did. What he's downloadable character, right? He's download
Yeah,
content, so you like what pay extra for him or something, or you get him,
correct.
and it's like, oh, you know what? That they'll think this is cool. It's like you're so drunk off of the rest of the game, you've played da da da, da, and then it's like, boom, I bought this pack and I got this, or I played up to here and boom, I got this, and it's like, oh yeah, cool, cool, because you already have 100 other characters. Maybe that's where they were thinking. I don't know, but they threw in the kitchen sink on this guy. He makes absolutely no sense. I don't understand because I like just like you said, I look at his outfit and I'm like, but why? Why the gold chain on the kung fu outfit, and then the gaiters and the cane and the
Yes,
glasses? Like none of that
he's
makes any sense.
confused.
If I like, okay, let's go back to the point where like it was like really cool for everybody to be into kung fu. Okay, like
Right.
let's go back to Saturday mornings watching kung fu movies on TV, 1987. Okay, let's just go back there. All right, and I'm like, this may have been okay like back then if this was New York and you saw a dude who looked just like Leroy come out. We at that point in time in 1987 we probably would have been like, yeah, he's cool, man, yeah, because we wouldn't have known any better. Okay, there would be nothing more stereotypical. We would have been like, and not even that we would have been okay because we would have been like five. I was five at least, but but it would have been like, okay, you wouldn't have thought so much of it. Maybe older people probably would, but today, looking at this character, it's like you just got so many things wrong here. And I'm wondering if he's supposed to be funny. But how? You have a bear. Okay?
Yeah, you have panda bears.
A
Like
panda bear.
what?
Why?
What? Like if because that's the thing. Like because it seems like they weren't going for that. They weren't going for the outlandish
Mm.
of fighting an alien. They
Mm.
were like I really think that they were like black people would like this. And just for reference, I went back to the Wu-Tang Shaolin style video game
Mhm.
and looking at the characters. And granted, this is a hip hop group
Mhm.
they're infatuated with kung fu movies and stuff like that. If you look at their characters,
Mm.
they're way better designed. And this
Yeah.
is mad old. Like
Yeah.
like this is a PlayStation 1 game, I believe. But yeah, their characters from, ODB being a drunken style master and the
Right.
RZA having swords and everything, like they look granted, in the sense like there's a hip hop influence, but their weapons and how they uh if they're wearing like oriental gear or whatever, it actually matches. Like, the Jizza or whoever looks like a ninja. Like he has swords and like the stuff
Yeah.
fits together in a way that like, okay, you made a cool character. You made something that, he's not exactly because again, they're borrowing these elements, right? So he's
Mhm.
not exactly going to be like, you know, a ninja from Naruto or something of that sense.
Yeah.
He's still black, but he's not wearing a huge medallion while having swords and with Tim's on. Like that's not he understands that he's a ninja. Like that
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
huge gold medallion would not work with your getup. It just wouldn't.
Yeah.
And so like going back to Leroy, gotta hate that name.
I
In
know.
this sense, uh, like him going to spar with someone and or in this fighting tournament
Yeah.
and having the gold on, having the shades and the rings and the pimp cane, it's like
Yeah.
I want to be. And the thing is, I don't want to be as upset as I want to be, which is a weird way of saying what I'm
I get what
saying.
you're saying. I get what you're saying.
Because it's like I don't see necessarily see the intent to be malice or malicious, I should say.
Yeah.
But I'm like, you could have done so much better. And it on the opposite end, like the fighting community, they kind of like him because he has cool moves or it's like yeah, it's another black guy. I like to play as the black character.
Yeah.
I do too, but I don't. He's a poor representation, I think,
Yeah, and
personally.
it's not funny. It's like if it was supposed to be comedic, then I want his backstory to be like, oh, he's actually a pimp, instead of him being, growing up in the rough days of Harlem and whatever, ended up being a traitor, and I don't know whatever the rest of his backstory is, and then him ending up with this pit bull named Sugar. Like, if you seriously, like,
Oh man,
if you want to be stereotypical, then please go full on. But like, go full on. You gave him the name Leroy. You put him in some ridiculous outfit with a gold chain and some gaiters and some, like, he doesn't have a hat and he's wearing these glasses that have nothing to do with pimp style. Okay, they just look like some, what the ones that the dudes on the beach wear. Like, I want him to have some real pimp glasses. He needs to take a page out of Thugnificence. Wait, no, I'm sorry, a pimp named Slickback.
yeah.
That's what he needs to call that, a pimp named Slickback, and call Cat Williams. And they need to maybe change the color of his outfit to purple. All right, and he needs a hat and to go along with those gators and to go along with that pimp cane and his dog Sugar. Okay, and then
Yeah.
he needs to always have three hoes in tow. Three hoes in tow. One on her way out, one that's his best hoe, and then the one who just got there, the one there that's learning things. Three hoes in tow. Okay, that's about to be a hashtag or a t-shirt. And then I also need, like, do you remember in like Marvel versus Capcom when you could play Sabretooth, and if Sabretooth won the match, then he would pull out his Corvette with some girls in the back?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, let's go that far. If you want to be that ignorant with this character design, then you need to go full on. And then maybe we'll have a laugh at it. We'll still be pissed. We
Yeah.
we might laugh because right now I'm just confused. I don't want to be I don't want to be confused. I want to know that you're being stereotypically ridiculous, you know, and that you're coming from an actual point of view instead of just we need a black guy. What do black people like? Oh, pimp canes. No.
Yeah, yeah, because even the other characters that are funny, I mean, because you have the Asian character who's like Bruce Lee. There's
Yeah.
one that looks like Jackie Chan.
Yeah.
Uh, you have Eddie Guardo who does the capoeira. So
Capoeira.
it's like okay, so you hit certain notes
Yeah.
stereotypically, and
Mm-hmm.
they were okay for the most part. Um, and then you go with him, and it's like you you didn't know what to do for a black character who wasn't someone that was already kind of made for you to like because Raven being similar to Blade, it kind of writes itself.
Yeah.
Uh, and some of the other black characters too is like I can point out like a popular something that was pulled from for this particular character.
Mm-hmm.
With this person, I can't pull anything.
No.
It's a bunch of random.
Yeah.
Um, so getting off that a little bit, uh, there have been some good representation both
Yeah.
on the anime side and on the video game side.
Mm-hmm.
One of the best recent, and I say recent in the past maybe well 2012 since 2012 I'll go that far
Okay.
was Lee Everett from The Walking Dead,
Mm-hmm.
Telltale's The Walking Dead video game,
Mm-hmm.
and he was a great character, flawed character. You
Right.
actually meet him. He's in the back of a police car, uh, getting transferred. He's going to jail,
Mm-hmm.
and the zombie apocalypse hits,
Mm.
and he escapes. He meets up with a little girl called Clementine. She's
Okay.
actually in her treehouse,
Mm-hmm.
and he sees her, and he's like, he basically wants to help because her parents are gone. He's like, I'll help you find your parents, and you
Yes.
go on this journey with them, and it turns into this big thing, and it's a great point and click adventure game. Definitely check it out. But Lee was depicted really well. Voice acting was awesome. He plays a father figure to Clementine, teaching her different things as you go along in the story. I won't get into what happens to them in particular. There's more seasons, uh, but his depiction is done really really well. It was solid. There wasn't anything really. You could tell that he was black. There was, I don't know if we can go into idiosyncrasies here, but he was a black person, and it was
Uh-huh.
okay. There was no stereotypical things, and then the fact that he takes on uh, a father role for a little girl he doesn't know, and the fact, with him being recently being arrested, and how he kind of like, because he was, believe he was going to be. I haven't played it in a long time, but he was convicted of, or going to be convicted of murder,
Mm.
because he ended up killing someone out of a fit of rage, and
Ouch.
to see him change and become this father figure to Clem over the course of the game, and how he uses his rage for good, and how he helps people. Depending, it is a choice based game, so you can choose to be a little bit more angry versus calm in certain situations.
Mm-hmm.
But uh, how who he becomes towards the end of the game is really really pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I think they did a great job uh, with character growth.
Mm-hmm.
Even though that the game, I want to say you can beat each because it's the way it's broken up. It's an episodic game, so it's broken into different episodes, and I want to say there's five or six episodes. Like I said, I haven't played it in a while, and so you get to see their journey as they're going through Georgia, and they're meeting up with different people. They even meet up with uh, some of the characters from the comic,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and also from the TV show, and how they have to deal with difficult decisions, like they find a car, and the car has someone I guess was pushed off the road, and they have like all their when they pop the trunk, there's food and all this other stuff in there, and they're like,
Yeah.
should we take it or shouldn't we, because we're hurting, but at the
Yeah.
same time this person might come back for his car, et cetera, et cetera. And your choice actually changes what happens later in the game. Your morals get get planted into Clementine, and then who she becomes as she grows up changes and whatnot based on how you play. And so I thought they did a really amazing job with a black character who wasn't, how do you say, like, he was a the protagonist, but it wasn't like a black thing in the sense
Yeah.
that we could just be normal. We could just be a character in a story. We didn't have to be the token black guy or
Yeah.
the for angry black guy or
Yep.
that guy. You could just be in a story.
Yeah.
Uh, so I thought that was really cool. Definitely check that out if you haven't. I want to say the complete Walking Dead series is actually on sale. Yeah, it is. Where you get the whole thing. Where
The
it's
comic.
uh, well, not the comic, but the actual the Telltale game.
Okay. Okay.
Because it has multiple seasons, so like part two, part three, that sort of thing. You can
Hmm.
get all of it bundled together. And
Okay.
first season deals with just him and Clementine, and I would definitely check it out.
Mm.
Um, there are other cool depictions as well. Um, we had one. This is funny. We had a depiction or a character who I guess there was like controversy last year. It
Uh-huh.
was crazy. So Mortal Kombat. You never play Mortal Kombat. It's nuts. Uh, Basically, it's a tournament where fighters from different realms will fight each other,
Yes.
and if one of the realms wins 10 Mortal Kombats, the winner gets immortality for at least for until the next combat, Mortal Kombat, and
Right.
then they also get to jump into someone else's realm. So like we have Earth realm, we have the Nether realm, and a couple others. And
Hmm.
if Nether realm, let's say they win, they can come into Earth. And the reason why this is a big deal, before at one point, and this is for people who never played Mortal Kombat, to get bear with me.
Right.
Uh, there's an emperor who wants to conquer all realms, and he can't get into our realm without winning Mortal Kombat. So he kind of has to play by the rules until he doesn't. And so fast forward to Mortal Kombat 11. Yep, there's 11.
Yep.
Uh, Jax, one of the main characters.
Uh-huh.
So there's a new villain in the game who controls time, and one of the endings. So this is not a canonical ending, so it's not a spoiler. But one of the endings has Jax, where he beats this character and he takes their power, and it's like what do you want to do with being able to control time? And what he does is he erases slavery like it never happened, right?
Wow.
And so like when they show the result, it's like black people are in like a higher, as a whole are in a better situation in the U.S., right? And for whatever reason, the white people were upset. They were
Oh God.
they were like, and I'm not gonna
We can't have anything nice.
like, um, and I was like, why would this be a thing? Like, why would this be such a thing? Like, I don't understand why
Yeah.
people would be upset about it. And it has him depicting in like, if anything, he's wearing like cloth, like they could be considered like kente cloth or whatever. And I
Okay.
can see people being kind of upset because they don't know, like, certain cloth you wear for certain things, right?
Uh-huh.
And so it might not be accurate what he's wearing with certain black people, because that was a thing when Black Panther was big. People going to the movie theaters, they were just wearing whatever, and like some of them wore things that you would only wear to a funeral. So stuff like that.
Yeah.
But no, people were upset. Mind you, this is not the real ending. This is like a what if ending.
Right.
People on social media were like, this is reverse racism, and this
Which,
is
by the way, doesn't exist. It's
facts.
just racism, people.
Yes. Uh, uh, they were like, the reason why he's like this is because you guys were forced by, social justice warriors, and you had to be politically correct, and not. I guess they didn't know that Jax has always been this way. Like,
Yeah.
how they depicted their black characters have been pretty solid.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
this is not a weird thing for him to do.
Right.
I
And
don't.
let,
Yeah.
let's just cut in with one other thing. Aside from it not being a weird thing for Jax to do, anybody could do it. You know what
Right.
I mean? It's like Why is and I'm not knocking Mortal Kombat for this, but I'm saying for all the people who want to be angry about this, why does Jax have to be the only one who wants to go back in time and erase slavery? Like, oh, okay,
That's
you, Mr. Person who's pissed off online, who's, obviously not black. I'm going to assume you're white, but it doesn't
correct.
matter. The point is you're not black. If you had the power, so you're telling me that you wouldn't, if that was an option, there's literally three options. Kill baby Hitler, erase slavery, or make Adam and Eve not eat the fruit. Like, I'm just saying, those are all really heavy options. But like, and I'm not saying one is better than the other, but I'm just saying if you had maybe your only option, it's your only option. But I'm just saying if you had the ability to go back in time and erase slavery, like somebody said, here's Father Time's sand hourglass. If you turn it over, you can go back, get rid of slavery, and then come back. And you're just
Yeah,
gonna be like, no, I think I'm just gonna go to the dentist and go back in time and not get my wisdom teeth removed because
yeah.
my yeah, uh, like really, bro? You're pissed off because he decided to go back and get rid of slavery? You're pissed off because of that? Like,
Yeah.
uh,
Mm,
this is why we can't have nice things.
we can't. We just yep. It was one of those things where like I couldn't even be upset. I just had to laugh. Like it was like you can't, um, can't be that guy. Like you just can't. Like it just doesn't make any sense. It really because at any point if you're like so the opposite is for slavery to happen. So you want slavery to happen is
Right,
what you're telling me, right? Is what
right,
that what you're saying? That okay? All right. No, stop it.
right.
Um,
Now, stop it.
right.
Now.
Um, but yeah, there are more recent, some good picks recently uh, from video games. Uh, Watch Dogs 2, Marcus Holloway, in that he's pretty good. There's a couple of things here and there, but for the most part, he's a solid character.
Uh-huh.
You have let me see, off the top of my head. I'm trying to think of people that aren't also, because it's easy to go to like comic book people, like
Mhm.
like Nick Fury being in the game or Black Panther
Okay.
being in the game. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, we know they're already cool anyways.
Yeah, they were
Um,
cool.
heck, even the guy, crap, and I forget his name from Grand Theft Auto 5 is actually pretty decent. Because he's not, even though there's stereotypical things, and the
Mhm.
fact that he's a criminal,
Yeah,
obviously,
he's totally a criminal.
bad. But in terms of writing it, because everyone's a criminal, in
Yeah.
terms of writing a interesting character, um, yeah, it's they've actually did a good job of fleshing out him, especially given the fact that he makes choices in the sense that he can be really bad or he can be somewhat bad, right? You always play a criminal in GTA, that's the thing,
Yeah.
but there's always like you're kind of rooting for them in a way too,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. There's also uh, now granted, I don't want to I don't want to credit Overwatch because Overwatch does have some black characters. However, it took them a long time to get a black female. Actually, the first game it has a roster over 30 characters. There's no black females
Mm.
uh, until they announced Overwatch 2, and they have a black female that was mentioned in the first game, but the Blizzard's reasoning was that we don't have a black female character because for story reasons, for lore reasons. And it was like, no, nope, I'm not gonna
No.
buy that. You're
No.
just, and there's plenty of articles. I'm not gonna spend a big time on that, but there's
Mhm.
articles that kind of go into how that was a flimsy excuse,
Totally.
and because the idea is that Overwatch is very diverse. They have Asian characters, white characters, they have some people of color, but when it comes to like just like a black woman, for whatever reason, they just could not put one in. I don't know what that was about. But yeah, there are a lot of good examples out there.
Mhm.
I don't want to stay too much on the video games though. Let's slide over to the anime,
Mhm.
and we actually have some cool ones that are on Netflix.
Yeah.
Uh, Cannon Busters.
Mhm.
I was talking to you about last week. They actually have, I want to say, majority of their characters are black.
Yeah, it has a black creator, which is just very, amazing. And it's like, yay, go black people.
right?
It's just like, wait, you hear my point, you know?
Awesome. And it's a good anime. There's some things that I could a part of me I critique things, right?
Mhm,
So
of course.
part of me wants to critique, and other parts I'm like, I'm just gonna say it's dope. It's
Right.
a good anime though, and because I'm like, I just bigged you up, and now I'm about to critique. Nah, that's not cool. So
Nah.
it's a good anime, and the cool thing is that even though these characters are black, they're not necessarily the world that they inhabit isn't necessarily our world.
Yeah.
And so there's magic, there's machinery, there's a car that transforms into a mech by using quarters like an arcade machine.
So
So,
cool.
that's video games right there. Video games and anime mesh. The characters are designed pretty well, and it's funny. It's a pretty decent
Hmm.
show. We also have Carol and Tuesday, which I haven't seen, but I heard that was pretty sweet.
I do want to
Uh,
watch that. I mean, all of they're on my list, but I definitely want to watch that. It's about music, so.
yes, and I want to say it's a a black female and a white female
Hmm.
that are in a music group. Um, and then one of my favorites is and I hope I'm saying this right, Says Menos,
Seis Manos.
Seis Manos.
Hmm.
Uh, this show is like how do I explain? It's like a black exploitation film mixed with a western mixed with a kung fu film,
Mm.
and with a cast of like Hispanic characters. It's That's a lot, and it's an anime. That's a lot of stuff, right? You're like,
Yeah.
this just has to fall apart, but it doesn't. It's awesome. Everything from the animation to the over the top story to, I mean, even like, and granted, I like if you've seen like Dynamite, what is it? Darn it.
With Black Dynamite.
There you go, Black
Yeah.
Dynamite, right? If you
I've
like
seen
that
it.
film, you should like this anime. It's not as comical. There are some things that are like kind of more serious, but it's exploitative in the sense that it's graphic and but not in a bad way, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. Not to sound morbid, it is uh, very visceral in the things that happen. There's
Hmm.
also kung fu, and what's interesting, granted I have never studied, is that the characters seem to be doing moves that are realistic. It's not like back in the day with Ninja Turtles, they kind of just flip around and bodies start flying everywhere. Like they look like they're actually doing proper handholds, proper attacks. But then on the flip side, there's the stuff where it's like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, where they're jumping over things and balancing on poles and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Uh, definitely check that out. They're both all three actually are on Netflix.
Yes.
Um, Cannon Busters has like an awesome soundtrack, and mechs and things like that. Uh, Carol and Tuesday, I believe, has a really good soundtrack, from what I've been told.
Hmm.
But the last one, yeah, that you have to watch it. It's if you like that sort of thing, the kung fu and all of that, um, is definitely great. But outside of those, there are characters in other anime
Hmm.
that are black that are done really well too. Like
Hmm.
you have Hunter x Hunter, where now granted, I'll say this: the black characters are there's a black character who is I want to say she's like a maid to a group of assassins,
Uh-huh.
but she's also an assassin, and she's like a little girl who can beat up adults. Like totally dope character. There's also black characters in Naruto. There's
Hmm.
one that beatbox and rhymes all the time. We'll let him
Oh
slide.
my God, he's so. I forgot his name, but he's ridiculous.
Yes, we'll we'll let him slide. Yeah, but his brother,
His brother.
um, and a ton of others are great. Oh, there was one from Bleach that
Yes,
my
Yoruichi.
guy. Yes,
Yoruichi is absolutely phenomenal. I adore her from Bleach. Like, just everything about Yoruichi is the bomb. And I mean, she's a cat. Like, like obviously, there is a lot of times when you have black characters, they always end up being some sort of animal, and that is very irritating,
Yes.
especially because it's just so common. It's like it just seems like, especially in anime, it's like here's this black character, and they can be beautiful, like uh, we're going to go back right back to Yoruichi, but you have Lady Aisha from Outlaw Star, who was a
Yep.
tar and was some sort of like wolf tiger thing, and one of the reasons why I say that she's not like the best depiction is because here she is, she's beautiful and everything, but she's extremely irritating. Like they hated her the whole time, and then she only ended up becoming useful like in one of the maybe last episodes. Otherwise, she was extremely irritating. But that also had to go along with the show because their show was kind of like they were supposed to fail all the time because, if they were doing good at their jobs, and there would be no actual struggle in the show. So
Right.
she really wasn't helpful, but that was her thing, but she was also depicted kind of as this animal, and when she really did count, that's when she went full fierce. Like she turned into an animal and like fought people and bit people and killed people, and that was her. So we do have that little issue, but otherwise she was cool peeps. And then so you have Yoruichi from Bleach, who is super smart, and she used to be the captain of her God, I watched Bleach for so long, and I forget what they even called their
Was
team.
it the Soul Reavers?
Yeah, it was Soul Society was where they lived, and then you had the Taicho and Fukutaicho. You had the captain and then the vice captain,
Right,
and
right.
there's 13 leagues. I just don't forgot what they called the actual groups, because there's so many of them, and they all do something special. Like you have the one that's very scientific, you have the one that is full of like brutes, you have the ones that are like really, really, really just good at like swordsmanship in general, like because you have the Fukutaicho who or the Taicho who actually doesn't have um, a special swords type thing, because all of them have special swordsmanship, like their swords can turn into something. Anywho, the point
Like
is, what do we
Tozen.
do with the bomb? Yeah, like Tosin, who's blind and awesome.
Yeah, Tozen is an awesome character. I mean, granted, he turns out to be a bad guy, but
Right.
as a black character, yeah, he's pretty solid. And oh man, if you look at his depiction versus
Yeah.
Leroy, it's so
blind
much
guy,
better.
blind guy with dreads.
It's just so much better. Oh my gosh.
So much
Side
better.
side note, I remember just now you were talking about how like they make a lot of black characters animals. That
Mhm.
was something I've noticed too recently
Mhm.
with a lot of the movies that are coming out that are animated. Because I was like, oh, like for instance, Pixar released trailers for their movie Soul that's coming out, and it stars Jamie Foxx, and it's jazz based. It's a jazz based film,
Hmm.
and but then he gets like within the trailer he gets turned into an actual soul. So he's like blue, and he looks like I mean he looks like a watery Smurf or whatever.
Mhm.
It's weird. And then I was looking at the film what is it with Will Smith where he plays a secret agent
Yeah.
and he turns into a bird or like he gets put into a bird's body somehow.
Yeah, something like that. It's weird.
Right. And it's like, okay, so that was another black led film
Yeah.
and it's that. And then like we look at the only black princess and she gets turned into a frog for most of the film.
Oh God.
And it's like, okay. So like, I mentioned this like in a tweet a while back. I was like, thank God for Moana. Like at the very least, I
Yeah.
mean, there's a magical character that transforms, but at least she stays the same throughout the film.
Yeah.
It's like, what is this trend? Like, can we not
Yeah.
just have a black led animated character that just stays that way? Like,
I know.
and
It
I'm
took
not,
forever.
yeah, and it's like,
It,
I'm not saying that Soul or the Will Smith film is going to be bad or anything like that, but it's like, why?
yeah.
Like, because I was excited. I was like, oh, but we have a like an all black cast. Like, oh, this is
Yeah.
gonna be dope. And then it's like, oh, that's okay. So we don't even get to look like ourselves. Okay, all right.
Well, it's like, so obviously we grew up when the Lion King, the animated Lion King came out from Disney. And I grew up, we grew up loving Disney masterpieces and the Disney classics. They came out on VHS and we loved them, and we never really we didn't have anything for us. We loved Little Mermaid, we loved Cinderella, we loved all of the movies with white princesses. And we got The Lion King, which was a bunch of animals. And obviously, there's nowhere else where a bunch of lions live outside of a zoo except Africa, so we know it was in Africa. But then, you had your main character, Simba, was actually voiced by white people. Jason Weaver sang for young Simba,
Hmm.
but he was voiced by Jonathan Taylor Thomas, and then he was voiced by Ferris Bueller as an adult. So, and even going there, it's like we did not have. And this is a conversation I had with a friend of mine when we were like 18. I think it was our first year in college or something like that. And I was like, how come there are no black Disney princesses? How come there are no black Disney movies? We have all of these movies and no one's black. And like at the most we got Lion King, and that's not fair.
Right.
And then I remember this friend of mine, she was like, but there are no stories. She's like, there's just no stories that have black people as main characters. And I was like, what are you talking about? Any one of these fairy tales could have a black person as the main character. Well, no, none of them are like that. Like, and she was like, but none of them have been black. Like, we know Cinderella was white. We know Sleeping Beauty was white. And I'm like, and a mermaid in the sea? She a fish, for crying out loud. Like,
Yeah,
she could have been anything.
yeah, fam. Like, I stop it. Like, I don't like it. Okay, forget those films. It's not like Disney's never made original stories before.
Mhm.
Like, and especially nowadays we see it
Yeah.
with what Pixar is doing, what other people are doing, within Disney,
Mhm.
where they have these characters. It's definitely possible. Like, you can have a black or character or a black story. I mean, even the princess, the was it Princess Frog?
Mhm.
It started out
Frog
decent.
Princess. Mm.
Yeah, it started out decently, like with it being in New Orleans and
Yeah.
the her struggles and everything, and then it just went left all of a sudden, and it was like,
Everything
yo, like it's possible. It's not
Yeah.
difficult, and I
Yeah.
think people would like it, because how did Moana do? Like, I think Moana did extremely well.
First of all,
Uh,
Moana is it not only did extremely well, it was so touching. It was just such a touching story, and in beautifully animated, beautifully done. And this young girl, being able to do the what I would say would typically be a male type of story, because the
right,
prodigal son type thing, where a man is the one who typically leaves home and goes on an adventure and comes back. Yeah, Mulan did that, but she had to pretend she was a boy for it to happen, which is
right,
just still a great story. But Moana left as a girl princess, knowing she was a girl princess, defied her father, and dipped. And she's like, I'm gonna come back with something. And it was a very very well done story and well received. I don't know anyone who doesn't love Moana. I've never met anyone who does not love Moana. It's an
yeah.
amazing story.
And then we have, I mean, granted, it's Aladdin isn't necessarily, it's not. You're getting into, like, people of color realm. So you have, like,
Hmm.
Aladdin, you have Lilo and Stitch, you
Hmm.
have, and they do well. Like, Lilo and
Yeah,
Stitch did really well.
yeah, it was a
And
great
it
movie.
spawned multiple director film sequels, a TV show,
Hmm.
countless merchandise. Like, this is not a, and then Mulan is getting what is it, a live action film.
Yeah, it apparently is, and I just need to know who's playing what's his face, because I always had a crush on him.
um,
Just
Beyond
saying.
the crushes, but yeah, but like, it's possible, right?
Yeah,
and
totally.
and and granted, this is a bit of a tangent, but it's like, so for new films like coming out in 2020,
Hmm.
um it's like we can do a little bit better. Like, it's Spies in Disguise was the Will Smith film.
Hmm.
Will Smith plays Lance Sterling in that, and he turns into a bird, and it's like he couldn't just be a black agent.
I
You know what I'm saying? And granted, like I said, I haven't seen it yet,
haven't either.
but it's 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 one of those things where like we could have had that.
Yeah.
We there's you didn't have like when you went to the drawing board, unless this was always going to be a person turns into a bird story and
Hmm.
you wanted Will Smith and then you made him a black character. Um, but it's like, you know,
I
does it
don't
have
know.
to? Oh, go
Yeah.
ahead.
I know, I don't know because I don't know the story at all. I don't know anything about it, and all I know is that, I'm assuming that because it's geared towards kids, they have to make it, foolish with with
Okay.
the bird. And so I don't know, maybe that's another light to look at it in, because otherwise I don't know. But I'm guessing they want to gear it towards the younger crowd, and the younger crowd likes animals in their movies, which is why Eddie Murphy did so wonderful as the donkey. You know? He was so good. So good. But
Um, yeah, I would love to focus on that and but going back to the positive stuff, we also
right,
have
right.
um Morales in Spider-Verse, which
Mhm.
is easily one of the best uh superhero films, and then animated to boot.
He won an
Awesome
Oscar,
film.
right?
Yeah, it won
Yeah,
multiple awards.
yeah.
Definitely an awesome film. People should check that out. I want to believe that's also on Netflix. It'll
It
eventually
is.
be on Disney Plus.
It's on
Um,
Netflix.
one of
And
my
guess what?
favorites. Very cool. The main character is Afro Latino Spider-Man,
Hmm.
and and from the Miles Morales Spider-Man books that were super popular. Uh, did an awesome job. Speaking of Sony, though, one of the big actually this is kind of small. One of the big things right now for Sony is there's a animated short. Uh, this is done by All Black. It's called Hair Love,
Oh
and
yes, Hair Love.
it's where a father is trying to fix his daughter's hair. I'm not going to give away what happens. It's actually really like powerful emotionally, but he's basically trying to get his daughter's hair fixed before they go to this appointment, and it's all over the place. Like there's a one point where the hair metaphorically turns into like a giant monster and like punches him. Like they're in the ring, like they're boxing, and like the hair
Hmm.
takes the comb and throw it, and then like punches him in the face. Um, awesome animation and
Yes,
awesome short story, and
yes.
I want to say it's up for an Oscar.
It is.
Uh,
I do believe it is. Yeah.
and it was funded on Kickstarter.
Yep, I
Uh,
was one of the donators.
and then awesome. So there
Yep,
you go.
I donated to that very early on.
So do you remember who? I know like the Bruce Smith was a part of that. He's a creator of the Proud Family,
Mm,
and I forget there was a team of animators. Well, Bruce Smith is one of the animators,
mm.
and I think Everett Downing Jr. He was an animator on Wally, I believe. I forget who else, but it was just mostly a black cast,
Mhm.
and or behind the scenes were black, and they did an amazing job. And
Yeah.
it's interesting because we're kind of like ending on a hair note, but like coming from weaponizing hair. This is an instance where hair is weaponized, but in such a good way
Yeah.
that it just speaks to kind of who we are. I mean, and then there's multiple levels. There's the
Mhm.
the idea of like the dad who, in this moment at least, is a single father trying to deal with hair, and that's not something
Mhm.
he's done before, and how his daughter's reacting to his failed attempts,
Mhm.
their frustration, and eventually how they work through it, which was like it's just ingenious. And then come to find out what their appointment was huge. Like it was
Right.
just like they did a really, really, really solid job. I hope they win everything that they're nominated for.
Yeah, I hope they will
Uh, you
too.
can check it out for free online. It's I saw it on I think it was on YouTube. but it's called
It should
Hair Love.
Hair Love by Matthew Cherry.
Yes,
And it should be everywhere. Like you should be able to see it like anywhere now. It's this is something I don't mean to quote what's his face, but it's like a for us by us type thing where
facts.
this is a black person, black people creating a black story that is relevant to black people. Okay, this is something that we all can relate to, and you, Kenny, are a father, and you have beautiful daughters with beautiful
Facts.
hair. And this is something, again, like what I was speaking to before about going through what we children went through on either wash day or just, styling day or whatnot, and with our parents or our guardian or whoever, older sister, doing our hair so that we could look kempt and go to school and go out in public so that we weren't treated a certain way. This is our grooming, which
Right.
takes a lot of time. This is something that it's equivalent to like men going to the barber shop and having a communal space where they can commune and share their lives. This is a moment where young girls share these moments with their parents or their sisters and their aunts and their cousins and stuff, and go through this wonderful little process, which can be challenging. This is something that we know as a community. The Black community knows it. So it's wonderful when we can create this story and put this story out there for the public to see, and it's from our point of view regarding us. Whereas maybe someone who's outside of our community who doesn't necessarily understand that will create something that we then take offense to, because it's like, you didn't do your research. You should have called somebody. You should have asked one of us.
Exactly. Exactly. And the fact is, and even though it's, for us by us, that doesn't necessarily mean that people who aren't us won't appreciate it. There's a lot
Exactly.
of things that being a short, if you've seen like Disney shorts, which are Pixar and whatnot, they're really good in the sense that they can tell a story without telling a story.
Hmm.
And so even though there's certain things that you might not understand from our point of view, the 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 story in totality you can understand and appreciate.
Mm.
And then also the awesome animation.
Yeah.
So I could talk about that show or that Hair Love all night, but we're getting up there in time, so
Time.
I kind of wanted to do a little bit of housekeeping before we wrap things up. Interesting enough that we're coming up on February, so
Hmm.
this was an awesome topic to have.
Yes.
Uh, Thank you for listening. Hopefully you listened through the whole thing. I plan in the future to have the times so you can click to a certain topic that you want to listen to, or if you want to skip a spoiler. Right now, not so much, but in terms of all the work that I have to do, not so much. But those are things that when we grow, I was talking about before that we're going to eventually be on Spotify and things of that nature.
Hmm.
These will be the things. Timestamps will also be a thing. I might have to. Hopefully, I can get to the point where I can just hire someone and then they will do it.
Yeah.
That would be great because then I don't have to think about it. Uh,
Yeah.
you know, but that's definitely something that we want to do. We definitely want to broaden our topics and still include the stuff that we like to talk about, anime, films, and all the other stuff. We're gonna get more into movies coming up soon, more into the episodic stuff that are on Netflix and Disney Plus and stuff like that. So these first two, we don't necessarily get to talk about anime as much, so that's why it was very much anime driven.
Yeah.
But we will definitely talk about video games, movies, manga, and so forth. So please stick with us. If you will, please subscribe and hit that bell so you'll be notified when we have another
Hmm.
podcast. And if you want us to talk about a certain topic, or you want us to divulge more on a certain topic,
Yes.
then definitely let us know. In the meantime, though, you can follow me at Kenny U of G on Twitter. You can follow the site at U_F_G on Twitter.
Hmm.
You can check us out on Facebook, UnitedFrontGaming.com, or United Front Gaming, as well as our website, UnitedFrontGaming.com, for news, reviews,
Hmm.
previews, interviews, and all that other good stuff.
Yeah.
You can follow Teresa, I believe, at Messy Tessie.
Yeah, we're still working on that.
Okay. We're still working on that. We're gonna update you on that, so you can follow her somewhere, and then
Yeah.
you can ask questions, and if you don't want to necessarily comment under the YouTube pages, uh, you can ask her in different ways, and you know definitely share the video, or not the video but the podcast, wherever, if you liked the content. And again, yeah, we want feedback. We've seen that some of you liked us. You gave us the thumbs up, so that
Thanks
means we're
for
doing
that.
something right.
Yep.
And we also got more subscribers because I don't know if it was because of this. We are doing a lot, but the timing, I was like, maybe. So we appreciate that. And like I said, I hope you continue to follow and continue to listen. We're going to continue to grow, continue to talk about cool things, and
Mhm.
from a black nerd perspective, or
Yeah,
just a black perspective, really.
really,
Uh, and yeah, we want you to take you guys on the ride with us.
definitely.
Um, did you have any housekeeping notes to share?
No, no, and just, continue to listen. We're always gonna have something new and cool to talk about. I'm totally a geek and I'm always into Terrace House. So please come and listen because I'm gonna talk more about Terrace House in the coming weeks. And I just really want people to know that I am a huge Terrace House fan. And yeah, one day maybe they'll let me sit on the couch when my Japanese gets better.
Where can people find that actually?
Terrace House is on Netflix right now. So four
Okay.
seasons, yeah, 4 seasons of Terrace House are on Netflix. The previous seasons, I think they're like on YouTube and stuff, but they're not subbed. So, if you speak Japanese, then fine, you can, find it. But as for the subtitled versions, they're on Netflix, 4 seasons. I would start from the 2016 season and go forward from there. Don't start at the end and go backwards. Yeah,
There you go.
my
Well,
advice.
thanks again, and we
Yep,
will
thanks
see
everybody.
you next week. Uh, Actually, it doesn't really matter the time. We usually record on Thursday nights, and then
Hmm.
we post on Friday. So I guess going forward, we will see you on Friday.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much for listening and see you next week. Bye.